Hello everyone, back to you in today's second video. So we've already done the January 2018 month-ahead broadcast. You can find that video on the month-ahead broadcast page. We're linking to it from the homepage here at GazWebVids. Got problems for this January because the long-range models, CFSV2 Beijing Climate Centre, are going for a very westerly and sort of zonal type month but you expect quite a lot of storminess and deep areas of low pressure, probably bringing very wet and mild conditions, not just to the UK, but to many parts of Europe. Now, I think they're going over the top with that prediction. So the GazWebVids January forecast is for a rather colder month than those long-range models are forecasting. I don't think it'll be wall-to-wall cold weather. We will get mild stormy periods at times, so kind of similar to what happened in December in many ways, except when the cold bites, it might be even colder than what we had in December. I do think we'll have some snow in January as well. The long-range models, uniquely this winter, are struggling to pick up the subtleties of the pattern, and the pattern is ready to be westerly. It's Atlantic-driven winter so far, but with the subtleties being that the jet stream is constantly trying to move southwards, so plays goes onto the cold side of the jet, and lining up northwest to southeast through the Atlantic and into Europe as well. And that means that we place on the cold side of the jet stream and the cold side of the areas of low pressure as they move through, and that's the reason we've been getting rain and snow during the course of December. And I would expect more of that to continue into January. The only difference is, but I think January could be, because it's generally a colder month anyway, when the cold bites, it will probably be colder than we had during December. But it won't be totally cold. There will be significant mild periods as well, so a proper chopping and changing type month once again. Anyway, I'll check out the January month-ahead forecast for more on that. This video is going to cover the next week, 10 days. We've got cold weather coming up at the end of the week, into weekend, and possibly lasting into next week too. In fact, the ECMWF model is this morning showing quite a prolonged cold spell, and I will show you that run from the ECMWF in this video. The GFS is much less sure about a prolonged cold outbreak, but I'll show you what's going on in a second. You've probably noticed that we're using a brand new webcam. So after 5 years of using the Microsoft LiveCam Pro, I've got rid of it and I've got a Logitech webcam. So it's high definition. Hope you are enjoying the new webcam. It's going to take some getting used to, I think, and the thing about it is that it should now be in sync. So when I'm speaking, it should be in sync with the picture that you're looking at, hopefully, if it's all working as it should. So you have to let me know what you think to the new webcam. Let's get on with the video anyway, and we're going to begin by having a look at the radar picture. So this is the latest from the Weather Outlook. Now, I had a very wet morning across many parts of the country this morning. Most of that rain has now shoved off into the North Sea, but another batch of very wet weather is heading in towards Ireland, and this is the start of Storm Eleanor. Storm Eleanor is going to be with us overnight tonight and into tomorrow. It'll bring heavy rain across many parts of the country. It'll also bring gale or severe gale force winds as well. This is the facts chart from the UK Met Office for 6 o'clock in the morning. This area of low pressure is Storm Eleanor, and it's a very deep area of low pressure indeed at 966 millibars. Quite a complex area of low pressure as well, because you also have another low out here in the Atlantic at 975 millibars. On the southern side of this low pressure, that's where the strongest of the winds are going to be. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, we've got gale force winds across Ireland and into parts of England and Wales as well. Could be severe gales. That's gusts of sort of 60, 70, 80 miles an hour around western coast, probably 30 to 50 miles an hour further inland. You'll notice it's not particularly windy across Scotland. You're under the centre of the low pressure there, so under the centre of the low, you'll tend to have lighter winds. And also there's a lot of weather fronts wrapped around this area of low pressure too, indicating a chance of not only windy but also quite wet weather. So we have got weather alerts out from the UK Met Office. This is the Met Office weather warnings page. If I scroll you down, you'll be able to see where they're warning for, and it's really for Northern Ireland, England, Wales, and possibly to the very, very far south of Scotland. But really, these weather warnings are for Northern Ireland, they're for England and for Wales. They're valid from 6 o'clock this evening through to 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. And the UK Met Office is saying that Storm Eleanor will bring very strong winds later Tuesday, continuing overnight and on Wednesday. The warning has been adjusted to bring the northern boundary southwards and to combine with the warning previously in force for Wednesday. Public transport may be disrupted or cancelled, and some bridges are likely to be closed. Power cuts and disruption to other services, mobile phones for example, may occur, while injuries from flying debris are possible. Combined with a period of high tides, it is likely that western coastal communities will be affected by large waves and spray, and again there is the chance that injuries or danger to life could occur from large waves or beach material being thrown onto seafronts and coastal properties. So essentially it's going to be a very stormy spell of weather coming up over the next 24 hours, and we could see disruption to transport, we could see threat to life as well. So case of batten down the hatches if you're across Ireland, England, Wales. I say just about just very far south of Scotland, but this has been trended southwards over the past few hours actually. So do keep in mind about these warnings if you're off out and about in the next few hours. Right, looking at the weather next week to 10 days then, these are the 500 millibar high anomaly flowcharts from the PSU, Penn State University website. Now, I haven't had the ECMWF on these charts for a little while, but it's back. So we have now got both the ECM and the GFS 7 to 10 day height anomaly means at Penn State University website, and so we can compare the two. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which I'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 10 feet is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure are being moved around by a jet stream running above. Red extrapolates to high pressure and blue to low pressure. So you'll see what the ECMWF is doing, and the reason I said at the beginning of the video the ECMWF is going for quite a prolonged cold spell, and the reason is that it's got this blocking area of high pressure setting up over Scandinavia and stretching it out to the north of the British Isles as well. At the same time, we've got below average heights to our south, which means the winds are coming in from an easterly direction like that. So, and when you get that kind of blocking signature to the north, it's not going anywhere fast. So we could well see at least a week of cold weather if the ECMWF is right, starting at the end of this week and go through at least to the end of next week, possibly even longer than that. The ECMWF really is going to town on that blocking signal this morning. Now, this is the GFS, and it's much less dramatic. So we do still have that area of above average heights to our north and northeast, but we've also got this area below average heights to our west, and we've got the jet stream coming through the Atlantic as well. So we're doing something like that with the flow and with the jet stream, just much more unsettled. And because it's generally a westerly or northwesterly flow, I mean, it's not mild, but because it's west or northwesterly Atlantic flow, it's milder than what the ECMWF is seeing. The ECM is definitely going for quite a pronounced and would be quite a prolonged cold outbreak if that setup came off. The GFS is much more Atlantic driven, and therefore it is milder, even if it's not desperately mild. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles, or upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles. Looking at Glasgow today, somebody's asked me to have a look at the ensembles of Glasgow. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature for Glasgow. This is where we're starting off right now, around average. That's our cold spell coming up at the end of the week into weekend, lasting through to the start of next week. The GFS is going for that, so we are going to get colder at the end of this week, through the weekend, and inside of next week. But then the GFS wants to lift those temperatures up during this period just here, turning things milder. That's as the Atlantic starts to strike back, before maybe another colder spell is appearing there into the middle part of January. That's at the extended range of the model, not to be relied upon, but it is certainly possible that cold weather will come back after this milder interlude. If that milder interlude occurs, as the ECMWF doesn't show that milder interlude, there has to be quite a lot of uncertainty about it. In terms of precipitation spikes, so we've got quite a bit of rainfall coming up in Glasgow over the next couple of days, so the next few days to the end of the week. When it turns drier with that colder weather, then the rainfall spikes are coming back, running up towards the middle part of the month. This is how surface temperatures are looking for Glasgow. So starting off quite cold already at around 5 degrees, but there's a cooling trend here into the weekend. Actually, we're getting ice days in Glasgow for a few days over the weekend into the start of next week, with some quite hard night frost as well. Excuse me. After that, we start to lift the temperatures back up a little bit, only going up to sort of 4 or 5 degrees though, so certainly nothing to be getting excited about, and then maybe falling back again, as I say, going into the middle part of January. This period just here, this is in the extended range, so it's unreliable, but going into the middle part of January, we might start to see near ice days coming back as well. Generally quite a cold first half to January, even on this solution, and I'm going to show you the charts from the GFS and ECMWF in a moment. And the GFS is much more mobile, it's much more Atlantic driven, but even with that, it's generally quite a cold first half to January. Bear in mind, this is for Glasgow, so probably it won't be as cold as that for somewhere in southern England once we get into next week anyway. But it is an indication, but I think generally temperatures are going to be a little bit depressed or suppressed as we go through this first half of January 2018. So that's a temperature anomaly for the next week, coming out generally colder than average for much of the UK. The far south and southeast is still coming out a little bit milder than average from the 2nd to the 10th of January. But most of the UK is actually average to cold than average, particularly for Scotland, also parts of Norway and for Ireland and Iceland as well. Other parts of Europe, though, still coming out very substantially milder than average. Precipitation anomalies looking like that, average to wetter than average, not just for the UK, but for many parts of Western Europe. Notice Scotland is coming out a bit drier than average. That's probably because you're going significantly onto the cold side of the jet stream, and also there's going to be that blocking feature around Scandinavia through the weekend and start of next week, so that will make things drier up in the north. Over in America, the big freeze continues for the east of the state, so many central and eastern parts of America having very significantly colder than average temperature anomalies over the next week, the 2nd to 10th of January. It's milder in the west. I am seeing signs that as we go into mid-January, we may well see this cold spell in Eastern America fizzling out, and we may actually start to have quite a substantial lift up in the temperatures across the states for Eastern America for the middle of January. So I know we do have people watching from America. If you are fed up with this dangerous, it is very dangerous cold that set in over Christmas and New Year period, you've probably got about another week of it to go, but as it goes through to middle of January, you might start to see that big freeze beginning to relax quite a bit. In terms of precipitation in America, many southern and eastern parts of the states coming out drier than average. It's a little bit wetter through central states. Obviously, a lot of this over in the northeast is going to be snow. Right, coming back to the UK then, this is how the GFS is looking for Friday. We've got low pressure centering itself over the top of the country, and it's on the northern side of this low pressure, but again we are starting to dig those cold northerly winds in. Remember, the black line here is the jet stream, so as I was talking about at the start of the video in relation to the January month-ahead forecast, you'll see that the jet stream is on a southerly track. We're on the cold side of the jet stream, and the warm air, of course, to the south of the jet stream. So we're on the cold side of the jet, and it's aligning itself northwest to southeast, which is allowing cold air to push down into these areas of low pressure. So that's the reason I'm not convinced about what the CFS V2 and Beijing Climate Centre long-range models are showing for January, because I don't think they've picked up on the subtleties of this southerly tracking jet stream that we've got through this winter. They are seeing that the jet stream is strong and it's coming, as you expect, across the Atlantic into Europe, and so they're assuming that that's just going to bring loads of warm and wet weather to the UK and the rest of Europe, as it would normally do so. But because the jet stream is further south than usual, something that these orange models are not picking up on all that well, that's the reason that I'm not convinced it's going to be as mild and as wet as those models and as stormy as those models are predicting. Nevertheless, there will be mild and stormy conditions through this January. Right, so that's Friday. This is Saturday. That low pressure is pushing off into Europe. Notice how far south the jet stream is going now. A real dip in the 500 millibar flow, going almost down towards North Africa there, and that's allowing the winds to turn into the north, so much colder air is returning on Saturday with the chance of rain or snow over the weekend. That's how things are looking on Sunday, the 7th of January. We've got this area of high pressure setting itself up over top of the UK. Bitterly cold air is coming into that area of high pressure with these east to northeasterly winds. That's Monday. The high pressures across southern Scandinavia. At that point, the wind is still coming from the east. It doesn't look all that cold in terms of the upper air temperatures. They're not particularly dramatic, but if I show you the surface temperatures via the dew points, that's how things are on the surface, and you're so very cold. Actually, this could be the coldest outbreak of the winter so far that we have over the weekend and into start next week. So we've already had some pretty cold weather through December, but this could be a really bitter spell, especially for the south, where we'll have that strong easterly wind. I suspect it'll bring in some snow flurries, probably not all that much snow. It depends how far north that high pressure is centred, where the GFS is centring that high pressure on Monday. Just there. It doesn't really imply a particular risk of snow, but it will really be the cold, I think. That's the most notable thing over the weekend and into the start of next week. There will be some snow around, however, and we'll have to firm up on that. Now, by Tuesday, that high pressure is still there over Scandinavia, but it's starting to slip backwards. Low pressure beginning to come in from off the Atlantic. Now, this low pressure is having quite a struggle on this latest 6 o'clock run of the GFS. So very gradually, we're starting to move this low pressure in from the Atlantic. It's coming into cold air, so there might be, if it comes off like this, a risk of some snow through the middle part of next week before eventually the Atlantic breaks through. That's how things look by day 10, which is Friday, 12th of January. And the Atlantic hasn't really broken through with any conviction. Even now, the jet stream is still sort of coming across the Atlantic like that and then dipping southwards like that. So we're still almost on the cold side of the jet, and it wouldn't take much of an adjustment from this at all to actually keep us really quite cold through the course of next week. And I think very gradually the GFS does seem to be shifting a little bit more towards the ECMWF scenario. Now, just beyond day 10, then the Atlantic really starts to break through. So that's Saturday the 13th. Those westerlies are breaking through. But there's some uncertainty and some doubt about that. Now, this is the ECMWF run I was talking about at the start of the video. This is quite impressive. So this is how we start off on Friday, very unsettled with low pressure across the country. Into Saturday, that low pressure is slipping southwards, high pressures building around Iceland, winds are turning back into the north, bringing cold air back down from the Arctic. That's how things look on Saturday, with the winds in from the north and the east. That's a strong easterly wind that's blowing across England and Wales. It might be bringing in snow showers to parts of England and Wales as well. Then on Monday, this high pressure slipping down across the UK. Still very cold at this point, very frosty, and there could still be wintry showers left in the southeast. And then, unlike what the GFS is doing, by Tuesday, starting to move the Atlantic back in, the ECMWF takes this high pressure up to Scandinavia and still has us in that easterly wind. And then that easterly wind lasts throughout next week. So once the easterlies get in, they can be very hard to shift, and that's what the ECMWF is showing this morning. This is Wednesday, still in that easterly flow. By this point, the GFS is well and truly moving the Atlantic back in. That takes us to Thursday, and then this is how things are looking on day 10, or by day 10, which is Friday the 12th of January, and it's still looking cold even then. In fact, we do have a few hints of retrogression here. So we've got high pressure over Scandinavia on Thursday the 11th. By Friday the 12th, that high pressure is still over Scandinavia, but it's also starting to send a ridge towards Iceland and Greenland. Again, if we could go on another 24 hours, I suspect we will find this high pressure going in that direction, and we would start to pull down a renewed northerly blast from the Arctic. That's a prolonged cold spell that the ECMWF is setting up. But do bear in mind the GFS is not there yet in terms of a prolonged spell of cold weather. Finally, the GEM, so this is how things are looking for Friday. That's the changeover day, back to colder conditions. Those cold northerly, northeasterly winds are pushing down across the country through Saturday into Sunday. It stays cold with winds in from the northeast. And then as we go through into the early part of next week, there's a high pressure sinking down over the UK, very cold and frosty. And then the high pressure starts to move towards Scandinavia through to the middle part of next week. So this is Wednesday, 10th of January. High pressure is blocking things out between Scandinavia and Iceland. The winds are well and truly from the east as well. Look about easterly by Thursday, the 11th of January. Follow the isobars back. The easterly winds are coming from a very, very long way east over in towards the west of Russia, pushing those bitterly cold east winds across the country, and I suspect that would be enough to be producing snow showers across parts of eastern, central and southern Britain. We finish up on day 10, which is Friday the 12th of January. Still very cold, high pressure maintained to north of Scotland, and those winds are blowing from an easterly direction. Those are classic charts from the ECMWF and the GEM. If you like cold weather and chance of a bit of snow, they're probably the best charts that we've had in winter, maybe since 2012, 2013. So you've waited a long while to start to see charts like that. The only caveat is that at the moment, the GFS isn't really going for it. So you've got to wait just a little bit longer to see whether the GFS comes into line, or whether these two models, the ECM and the GM, are going a bit over the top with those east winds. It's possible that they are, but at the moment what we can say is that it's going to turn much colder at the end of the week. The cold weather will continue into the weekend and the start of next week too. Probably not all that much snow. We've got to firm up on the snow risk with this, but it's certainly going to feel bitter, I think, by the end of the weekend into next week. It really will be feeling bitterly cold, and then we might sustain that throughout the whole of next week, those easterly winds, and if we do, they'll just get colder and the chance of snow will increase through the course of next week. Alternatively, we might start to move the Atlantic in. Of course, that poses problems in itself as well, because as the Atlantic tries to come in and bumps into that cold air, then we have the risk of rain turning to snow before maybe the Atlantic gets through and then we get a thaw. Right, that's it for today's second video, and thanks for watching.